Welcome back, Devils fans, and presumably some Buffalo Sabres fans. I am your host, Ace, here on Running with the Devils, and I am here to talk about the man of the hour, the man with the reunion plan. It was announced yesterday, Buffalo Sabres hire Lindy Ruff as their head coach.
He's buff, he's tough, he's Lindy Ruff.
Don't get it confused, guys. I'm not a Lindy hater by any stretch of the imagination. I actually like Lindy a lot. I think he's a great human being, and I think he's a very good NHL coach. The reality is some things happened along the season. I'll get into them in depth in a little bit, but it had to be done at the time. And so now Lindy Ruff goes to the organization where he started his coaching career in 97-98, spent 15 seasons with the Buffalo Sabres. The furthest they ever got was in his second year. They made it to the 1999 Stanley Cup Finals before falling to Eddie Belfour, Mike Modano, Brett Hull, and the loaded Dallas Stars team. So the Sabres finished 99 Eastern Conference champions, fall in the finals to the Stars, and Hull was in the crease, guys. If you don't know what I'm referring to, if you're a younger fan, look up the whole Brett Hull in the crease against the Sabres in the finals. You'll see tons of stuff on that. But check that out. But didn't get it done in Buffalo, almost brought them to the promised land, had some decent seasons there, and just could never get the ultimate prize of the Stanley Cup. And over 15 years, 571 of Lindy's career wins happened as a Sabre. So 571 wins out of his 864 total NHL wins, which places him fifth on the all-time winningest coach list. Lindy Ruff, absolute legend. Absolute legend. He's returning to Buffalo where it all began, hoping to bring the Buffalo Sabres to the playoffs and, see what he could do there. In some of the interviews when Lindy was hired yesterday, he spoke a lot about wanting to win now, and, the pieces are there and the time to win is now, and for this group to take the next step. And so if I'm a Sabres fan, I'm probably excited by this. He is familiar with the fan base of the area. He had some good years there. He did have Dominik Hasek, who was an absolute monster of a goaltender. Dominik Hasek, for those who might not know about him, look him up. Last name spelled Hasek. Do your research. This man is one of the greatest goalies of all time as well. And Lindy just couldn't get it done. So he returns to where it all began, trying to bring this team to the playoffs. And they finished a few more points than the Devils did this year. And you all remember the 2-goal lead we blew in the third period against them a few weeks ago, which I declared the beginning of the end for our playoff hopes. But I think it's a good hire for the Sabres, and maybe Lindy can get him to the playoffs. I don't think Lindy's a bad coach again. I do think whatever he was doing here was not working, and so I just kind of want to revisit the whole firing of Lindy Ruff. I've been fighting with one of my friends who just sends obnoxious text messages incessantly about Lindy Ruff, and declared somehow that the Sabres hiring was proof that he should have never been fired in New Jersey and all this stuff. So just to revisit the whole incident, I in no way blame Lindy Ruff for the down season we had this year. I would say he was a small contributing factor to the overall disaster that was the 2023-24 New Jersey Devils. I put most of the blame on Tom Fitzgerald solely for, failing to do anything, whether it was get us a veteran defenseman when Dougie Hamilton went down, get a goaltender when we had league worst goaltending all season. It was obvious to anyone watching that we definitely needed a goalie immediately, or not replacing Michael McLeod when he was banished from the team, selling off Toffoli for second and third round pick. At the deadline, a lot of things I'd point to in the season. Again, Lindy Ruff, unfortunately, if I had to just kind of summarize it as briefly as possible, I would say that while I do think Lindy is a good coach and a good NHL coach, he just was not the right coach for this team at this time. He was here for some of the earlier years of some of our core guys, and I do think that he probably helped develop them along the way and teach them some things and some lessons that, will help them throughout their career. But the reality is, for whatever reason, and, not solely on Lindy by any stretch, but the players I do not think were responding in the way they needed to when they needed to, and this whole season just fell apart. And again, I put a small percentage of the blame on Lindy. I think there's a lot of things he could have done better, which, you can't say now looking back how it would have played out if certain things happened. But, had he put Timo on the right wing where he belonged and on power play one, that could have been the difference of a couple games won. that we ended up losing, and maybe the whole trajectory is different. But that's just one of the things to me that a lot of us on this channel, calling for Timo to get moved to his natural position of right wing and get some power play one time. It didn't happen under Lindy. And then down the line, under the Travis Green era, Toffoli was moved, and maybe it kind of forced Green's hand to put down the right side and give him power play time. But either way, there's no way to know whether it was because of Green or Toffoli or a combination of the two. But with Toffoli gone and under Travis Green, Timo broke out and was one of the best players in the NHL in March and led the league with 13 goals. So I would just say the usage of Timo Meier alone was an alarming thing to me about Lindy Ruff. And I had some other issues with some of the stuff. He had that meltdown with the media and got very angry when people pressed him about Holtz. And the reality is, I do think there was a double standard. Alex Holtz seemed to be the whipping boy. Any little mistake he did, he was stapled to the bench and kind of, ice time cut as a result of some of these things. And there was guys like Luke Hughes that were making some terribly glaring errors, especially in our own end, that ended up in goals against. And there was no punishment there, seemingly. So it just seemed like there was a double standard. Different guys had different sets of rules in place for them. But in the end, Lindy, in his tenure as a New Jersey Devils head coach, amassed 128 wins, and he will forever be remembered by the fan base for being part of that Devils team last season that knocked the Rangers out in 7 games. I mean, that's something that the fans don't forget. Obviously we fell short of the goal of winning a cup with Lindy, but we did get to the playoffs and knock out the Rangers. And so for that, I will be forever grateful to Lindy Ruff, and I'll always remember him. And I'm wishing him all the best in Buffalo. I would love to see him win a cup. If the Devils aren't in it, assuming none of my other favorite players that are on other teams now are still around, Buffalo would be amongst the teams I'd be rooting for, because I always wanted to see Lindy win a cup. It's a shame that it couldn't be here with this core group, as a New Jersey Devil, but maybe he could get it done in Buffalo. But I'm curious, if you're a Buffalo fan and watching this, what do you think about the hiring? Are you glad to have Lindy Ruff back?
He's buff, he's tough, he's Lindy Ruff.
For the Devils fans, what do you guys make of this? I know a lot of people wanted Lindy fired much earlier in the season. This year, I did not want Lindy fired at all. I really like the guy, and I do think he's a good coach. But it eventually came to the point where I just said enough is enough. That West Coast trip and that game in L.A., there was just so many moments where we're just like, we just need a change. And it's unfortunate because I don't think anyone was clamoring for Travis Green to be the successor. And again, back to my idiot friend who sends me stupid text messages. He's like, oh yeah, see, we fired Lindy. Look what you got now. Yeah, the team basically mailed in the season under Travis Green. And again, he wasn't a coach that anyone was, campaigning for to be the next head coach. It has to be someone brought from the outside. But under Travis Green, the team kind of just mailed it in. In some of the games early on when Green took over, they were competitive and they showed some fight. But ultimately, under Travis Green, they just did not respond overall. They blew a lot of leads in the stretch where it really mattered to get points to keep the playoff hope alive. And so I don't think those are characteristics you want to see of your team with a new head coach. So, I don't think Green's going to be the head coach. I'm doing a whole nother video on guys I'd like to see interviewed and hopefully given a shot to coach the Devils. But it should not be Green, in my opinion. And to summarize, I stand by moving on from Lindy when we did. It's unfortunate. Like I said, he's a nice guy. I really do like him. But the team was not responding. And in an attempt to shake things up, Fitzgerald said, see you later, Lindy. Lindy got shown the door. I wish Fitzgerald did other things, like bring in the players we needed, like a goalie or a defenseman or anything really to try to help us get to the playoffs. But they decided no. We didn't spend any of Dougie's LTIR money. And so the Devils and Fitzgerald really, I think, dropped the ball. We could have made the playoffs, but now seeing the way the playoffs went, and again, I always want to make the playoffs over not. I'd rather make the playoffs and get swept than not make the playoffs. That's just the reality. Making the playoffs is the benchmark of, was your year even remotely worth it? You have to make the playoffs. That's just what it is. But this team, even if we did limp into the playoffs, we would have faced a very harsh reality against any of these teams. For anyone watching playoff hockey, you just already know that this New Jersey Devils team, as constructed, is just not ready for the warfare we're seeing every night. And I look forward to watching the Rangers-Capitals game a little later tonight. It's interesting stuff, really interesting stuff, and I hope it's eye-opening to everyone in the organization, whether it's the players, the coaching staff, assistant coaches, the analytics, math nerds, Fitzgerald, any of his assistants. I hope it's just a glaring reminder that this is hockey. This is the NHL, and this is a physical sport, and this year's playoffs is really showing us what it's about and what we sorely miss. And so to close it up here, guys, let me know what you thought about all this and the Lindy hiring. But I think Lindy's a great guy. I think he could be a good coach, and I think he could help the Sabres. But his time as the New Jersey Devils head coach ran its course, and we needed to move on. I, again, never wanted it to be green. It is what it is. Now the real search begins this summer, and we'll see who we get. But I think this team desperately needs more of a disciplinarian, hard-nosed kind of coach. I do think after seeing the way we responded in some of the games and listening to some of Fitzgerald's press conferences and interviews in the past week or so, it seems like there was a major lack of accountability, which is an indictment on Fitzgerald himself, but it's also on Lindy Ruff and the coaching staff. He was talking about maybe players not taking the weight room as seriously as they should and all these things. And when you add all that up, it's just that comes from the general manager, and it definitely comes from the coach as well. And so I would love to see a guy like Torts. I don't know what his future holds in Philly. I've always loved Torts. I think a lot of the players won't really like his style of coaching, and, you know, it is what it is. I think sometimes certain teams at certain points really need that pain-in-the-ass, hard-nosed coach that is going to ride them and demand greatness. And I think a guy like Torts is that guy. I think the country club atmosphere did not do our guys any favors, and now they need to realize it's time to bring it to the next level. Everything's got to get more intense and more serious, and we saw Fitzgerald kind of acknowledge all these things in one of the press conferences as well. And I summarized it as Fitzgerald saying he needs to be a lot more like Lou was what I took out of it. But check out all those videos. I have a bunch of videos about Fitzgerald's comments and all that on the channel as well. If you haven't seen the Devil's Locker clean-out day, there's some interesting moments in there. That's worth checking out on the channel. And I'll be back with more Devils news, different things involving the Devils, some random playoff chatter here and there. And so I will see you all, talk to you all soon. Let me know what you think about Buffalo hiring Lindy, and let me know, did you think it was justified to fire Lindy? I believe most of you are going to say yes. But, you know, I have that psychotic friend that likes to troll me, and he's like, oh, see, Buffalo hired Lindy, rah, rah. You know, and Lindy should have never been fired, and look what happened under Green, and fist pumping. It's obnoxious. He doesn't understand basic principles of how the game works, and, you know, that a change was needed, and we need to shake it up. But I will talk to you all soon. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Until next time, friends, let's go